She was sick, and he said it was my fault. I still remember the sound of the heart monitor beeping. Slow, measured, like it was counting how long I could hold myself together. She was 6. Her name was Lena, our daughter. My light, my world, my reason to breathe, and she was sick. It started with a cough that wouldn't go away, then fevers that came and went, then bruises that didn't fade. We ran tests, blood work, scans. I held her hand through every needle, sang lullabies while she trembled under hospital blankets. And then came the diagnosis: acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I still remember how the doctor's voice faded into static. I remember Lena asking, "Can I still go to school tomorrow, Mama?" And I remember how I smiled, nodded, then walked to the restroom and collapsed on the floor. Because how do you explain to a child that her body is fighting her from the inside? I called Jason right after. My husband, Lena's father. He was out of town, again. "You need to come home," I said. "What's going on?" "It's Lena, it's serious." There was silence. Then, "What did you do?" I froze. "What?" "She was fine when I left. You've been spoiling her, letting her eat junk, missing appointments." "Excuse me? You're the one with her every day, not me. How did it get this bad without you noticing?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our daughter had cancer. And instead of flying home, he was looking for someone to blame. And somehow he chose me. In the days that followed, he didn't come back. He said he had important meetings, that flights were hard to rebook, that you're better at handling this medical stuff anyway. I stayed by Lena's side every single day. I learned the language of medications. I whispered strength into her ears. I braided her hair as it began to fall out. She was so brave, braver than me. One night she looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Mama, does Daddy know I'm sick?" I smiled, lied. "Of course he does, baby, he loves you." But deep down, I was starting to wonder if he even remembered. A week later, Jason sent flowers. No note, no voice message, just a cold delivery with his name on the card. The nurse looked at me with pity in her eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hurl the vase against the wall, but I didn't. Because Lena loved flowers, so I placed them by her window and told her they were from Daddy. That same night, while scrolling through social media to numb the pain, I saw it. A photo. Jason, smiling, at a birthday party, with a woman I didn't recognize and a little boy who looked just like him. Caption: "My whole world." I stared at the screen, not breathing, not blinking. Then I looked at Lena, pale, sleeping, fighting for every breath. And I whispered to myself, he left us and built a new family while we were breaking. When he stopped coming to the hospital, the first time Jason didn't show up, I made excuses for him. He probably got stuck in traffic. Maybe he had a meeting he couldn't miss. He's just trying to provide. The second time, I told myself he was overwhelmed. The third time, I stopped lying to myself. He just wasn't coming. The hospital room became our world. White walls, sterile smell, a steady beep from the monitor beside Lena's bed. She never asked much, never complained. But every evening around 6 p.m., she'd glance at the door, just once, then go quiet again. I asked Jason to come. I begged even. "She keeps asking about you." His reply? "It's better if I stay away. Seeing me might stress her out. Besides, you've always been better at the emotional stuff." I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just looked at the phone in my hand and thought, how did I end up here? Fighting alone, for our child. One night, Lena had a rough episode. Her fever spiked. She couldn't breathe properly. The nurses moved fast. I held her hand, whispering, "You're okay, baby. I'm here. I'm right here." She was rushed into the ICU. I wasn't allowed in. I sat outside the glass, watching the tiny body I had carried for 9 months now being kept alive by wires and machines. I called Jason. "Ensign," hands trembling. "Lena's in ICU." He didn't answer. I texted. No reply. 3 hours later, he responded with a single line. "I'll come by in the morning." He didn't. That was the night I stopped waiting. Not for his help, not for his presence, not for his love. Lena pulled through. Because she was a fighter. Because she had no choice. Because I stayed. Days passed, then weeks. No Jason. No calls, no video chats, no flowers this time. But the world didn't pause for our pain. Life outside kept spinning. And one afternoon, while waiting for test results, I saw another photo online. Jason again. At a park. With the same woman, same little boy. This time, he was holding the boy's hand and smiling at the camera. The caption? "Father Sunday, nothing better." I stared at it, not with shock anymore, but with something colder. Numbness. Later that evening, I sat beside Lena as she slept. Her face was thinner now, her eyelashes almost gone, but she still looked like an angel. She murmured in her sleep, "Daddy?" And I whispered back, "He loves you, baby." Even if he doesn't know how to show it. Even if it's a lie, even if it breaks me. Because how do you explain to a child that the person who gave her life walked away from it? That night, I stood in front of the hospital bathroom mirror, looked at the dark circles under my eyes, the hair tied up in a tired bun, the woman holding everything together with nothing left to give, and I whispered, "It's okay, you're enough. Even if he's gone, you're still here." He smiled in family photos that didn't include us. The first time I saw the photo, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was old, maybe someone tagged him accidentally, but then I saw the date. It was from yesterday, the same day Lena had her 4th round of chemo. The same day I sat beside her hospital bed, holding a basin while she vomited between sobs. In the photo, Jason was smiling. Not the polite half smile he used to give at work functions, but really smiling. That kind of full-body smile you only wear when you're happy, unbothered, free. He stood in a garden, holding hands with that same woman. Her name, I'd later learn, was Alina. Beside them stood a boy, maybe 4 years old. Blonde curls, chubby cheeks, Jason's dimples. The caption read, "Family is everything, blessed life." I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen mid-scroll. I read it again, and again. Family is everything, but where were we? The second photo came 2 days later. Jason holding the little boy in his arms, ice cream smeared on both their faces. The woman kissed Jason on the cheek. He laughed, and beneath the photo she had written, "My boy is my world." I felt the sting before the tears came. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't even rage. It was grief. Grief for a life that was crumbling in silence, while the man who helped create it was building another one in broad daylight. Lena didn't know. She still asked about him sometimes, less frequently now. "Do you think Daddy's busy?" "Probably, baby, you know how work is." I couldn't tell her the truth. How do you explain that work now looked like weekend getaways and picnic blankets? That busy meant being a father. Just not to her. At the hospital, nurses had stopped asking about him. They knew. Their eyes said it all. Sympathy wrapped in professionalism. I kept showing up. With snacks, with silly books, with a smile that barely held together. Because Lena needed joy. Even if it had to be manufactured. Especially when her white blood cell count dropped again. Especially when the doctor said, "We'll need to consider a more aggressive treatment plan." That night, after Lena finally fell asleep, I sat in the hospital corridor with my phone in my hand. I stared at Jason's profile, watched his stories. Alina had posted a video of Jason dancing with the little boy in their living room. The boy giggled. Jason twirled him in the air. My thumb hovered over the message button for a long time, but I didn't type anything because I knew it wouldn't matter. Instead, I opened my photo gallery, scrolled through pictures of Lena. Lena in princess dresses, Lena painting our cat's tail with glitter, Lena smiling with her 2 missing front teeth. No Jason. He was always busy. Working late, stressed. But somehow, for Alina and that boy, he was present. Smiling, loving. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, I won't let her grow up wondering if she wasn't enough. Because she was. She always had been. That weekend, Lena made me a drawing. Crayons, shaky lines, but the intention was clear. A stick figure girl with a crown. And beside her, another stick figure with a big heart drawn on the chest. "That's me," she said. "And that's you." Amen, see? I smiled. "Where's Daddy?" She paused. "He's not in this one. He doesn't come around much." She said it simply, like a fact, like weather. I hugged her tight. And in that moment, I made a vow. You'll never feel unloved again, not because of him, not because of anyone. I'll be enough for both of us. Our daughter asked, "Does Daddy still love me?" It was raining that afternoon. Not heavy, just steady. The kind of rain that makes everything feel a little more fragile. Lena had just come back from another blood test. Her arm was bandaged. She was tired, pale, and quiet. Too quiet. We were coloring together. She was drawing flowers with no stems. I asked, "Why don't your flowers have roots, sweetheart?" She shrugged. "They don't need them. They float so they don't get stuck." Something about the way she said it made my heart ache. Like she was trying to understand things no 6-year-old should have to understand. Then after a long pause, she asked, "Mama, does Daddy still love me?" My hand froze on the page. I looked at her. Really looked. At the bandana wrapped around her little bald head. At her eyes wide and unsure. Waiting for an answer that would define how she saw herself. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say of course he does. I wanted to give her a fairy tale. But I'd already told too many lies in his place. So I set the crayon down, took her tiny hand in mine, and said, "I think Daddy doesn't always know how to show love the way we need." She blinked. "But he used to love me, right?" "He did. And I believe in his own way he still does. So why doesn't he come?" There it was. The real question. Sharp, simple, deadly. I don't know, baby, I whispered. But him not coming isn't your fault. It's never been your fault. She bit her lip. Did I get too sick for him? And that's when I broke. I turned away quickly, biting back the tears. No, I said firmly. You are not too sick. You are not too hard. You are not too much. You are enough, Lena, exactly as you are. She nodded slowly. But I could tell part of her didn't believe me. Because children don't hear words. They feel absence. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone in the hospital hallway. The lights were dim. The vending machines buzzed. Somewhere, another child cried. And I opened my phone again. Jason had posted a new picture. This time, him, Alina the boy, at a pumpkin patch. Laughter in their eyes. His caption read, "Family means everything to me." I didn't cry. I felt something deeper than sadness. Resolve. I opened the photo app, scrolled through every picture of Lena since her diagnosis. Her smile in the chemo chair. Her holding Max, our old dog, wrapped in a blanket. Her learning to write again after her hands got weak. I whispered, "You are enough. You've always been enough." And then I opened a blank document, titled it, "Letters She'll Never Have to Ask For." And I began writing. A promise, a record, a lifetime of love. So that if she ever doubted herself again, she would have pages and pages saying, "You were worth staying for. You were never the reason he left. And you are loved." He said her illness was too much to handle. I hadn't heard from Jason in almost 2 months. Not a call, not a text, not even a forwarded email about Lena's medical bills. Then one night, completely out of nowhere, my phone rang. It was him. I stared at the screen, heart racing. I let it ring until the last second, then answered. "Hello?" His voice was calm, casual. "Hey, I just wanted to check in." I blinked. "Check in? Yeah, how's everything going?" I almost laughed. "You mean with your daughter? The one in the hospital? The one you haven't seen in months?" He sighed. "Look, I know how it sounds. You don't. You never do." He paused. "Alina's been asking if we should send something. Maybe a gift or flowers. She doesn't want flowers, she wants her father." It's not that simple. "No, Jason, it really is." Then he said it. The line that cut deeper than anything before. "This is just too much to handle, Emery. I'm not wired for this kind of thing." Hospitals, sickness, the stress. I felt my blood freeze. "Too much to handle?" I repeated. "Yeah, it's heavy, And every time I think about it, it makes me feel uncomfortable." Exactly. I stood up, voice shaking, but steady. "You think I'm not uncomfortable watching our daughter fight for her life? You think this is convenient for me?" He was silent. So I kept going. "You walked away from her because you couldn't handle it? Because it made you sad? Because it hurt to watch?" "It's not just that. I didn't want the boy to see me sad all the time." "The boy," I repeated coldly. "Your new son." That's when the wall dropped completely. "I didn't plan for this," he said. "I didn't sign up for a sick child. You should have told me it was going to be this hard." I had no words left. Only rage, only heartbreak, only one truth. She's not a burden. She's your daughter. And you chose to stop being her father. He tried to defend himself, talked in circles, but I had already stopped listening. I looked over at Lena, sleeping peacefully, cheeks a little fuller since the last round of steroids. Still fighting, still glowing, even in weakness. And this man, her father, had reduced her to a problem he couldn't handle. "Don't call again," I said. "Not until you understand what real love means. You can't keep her from me." "I'm not. You already left. I'm just locking the door you walked out of." And I hung up. I sat down beside Lena, brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. She stirred, then whispered, "Was that Daddy?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "No, baby, that was just noise." That night, I emailed her oncologist, asked about at-home care options, because I was done waiting in hospital rooms for someone who would never show up. If Lena was going to fight, I would build the battlefield around her. And I'd do it without him. I found out he had a son with another woman. It started with an envelope. Plain, unmarked, stuffed into my mailbox at home while I was back for a few hours to grab clean clothes and bills. I almost didn't open it. I thought it was junk. But something about the handwriting on the front, my name in a shaky, unfamiliar scrawl, made me stop. I tore it open. Inside were photos. Printed, glossy, too real. The first one was of Jason, laughing, holding a toddler, curly-haired, big-eyed, smiling wide. The woman from the photos I'd seen before stood beside them, pregnant again. But this wasn't just another new life. The back of the photo had writing. It said, "To the woman who deserves the truth." There were more. One showed a birth certificate. I held it with trembling fingers. Father, Jason Miles Carter. Mother, Alina Rose Bennett. Child, Noah James Carter, born 3 years ago. While Lena was already sick, I sat on the floor, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just infidelity. It was abandonment, rebuilt into a brand new family. While I was sleeping in hospital chairs, while Lena cried for her father, while I sold my jewelry to pay for medication he wouldn't touch. He was raising another child, smiling in school plays, going to birthday parties, living the life we were denied. Suddenly, every unanswered call made sense. Every missed appointment, every business trip, every lie. I stared at Noah's face in the photos. He looked just like Lena had at that age. Same dimple, same gap between the front teeth. It broke me, because he wasn't the enemy. He was innocent, just like Lena. The only difference? His dad stayed. Later that night, back at the hospital, Lena wanted to draw again. She handed me a new picture. 3 figures holding hands. A little girl with no hair. A woman with long brown scribbles, and beside them, an empty space. "That's where Daddy goes," she said. "Why is he not there?" She shrugged. "He's always gone, so..." I leave it blank. I tucked the photo into my journal that night, right next to the photos of Jason's real family. Not to punish myself, but to remind myself, Lena will never be left blank again. That night, I wrote Jason an email. Not to scream, not to beg, but to end it. Subject, you chose. Jason, I know about Noah, I know about Alina, I know about everything. You had a chance to be a father to a child who needed you more than anyone in the world, and you left. You didn't just walk away, you ran towards something easier. Don't worry, I'm not coming after you for child support, visits, or closure. Lena has enough. Because she has me. And one day when she's strong again, she won't ask about you. Because by then, she'll know what a real parent looks like. And it won't be you. Emery. I hit send. Then I kissed my daughter's forehead and whispered, "You will never feel like someone's second choice again." She cried, he celebrated, in 2 different houses. It happened on a Thursday. Lena had been doing better. The new treatment was working, slowly. Her blood counts had started to improve. She was smiling more, laughing again. We even talked about maybe going home for a few weeks, just to let her breathe something other than bleach and hospital linens. But then, without warning, her fever spiked. She couldn't stop shaking. Her breathing went shallow. The nurses moved fast, the doctors faster. They called it a neutropenic crisis, a dangerous infection her body couldn't fight off because her immune system was too weak. I held her hand through all of it. She screamed from the pain. "Mama, I don't want to do this again." And all I could say was, "I know, baby, I know, just hold on, please." She was admitted back into ICU. Tubes, wires, beeping machines I had come to know too well. Her body was so small in that big hospital bed. And for the first time in this entire fight, I was scared she wouldn't make it. I texted Jason. I didn't want to. But I thought maybe if he knew how bad it was, he'd show up. "Lena is in ICU again. She's asking for you." No reply. Not even read. 3 hours later, as I sat beside her unconscious body, I opened social media, just to feel something different. What I found? Jason, holding balloons. Wearing a birthday hat, smiling wide, Noah stood in front of a giant cake, clapping. Alina kissed Jason's cheek. Everyone in the comments, such a beautiful family. Look at that daddy-son bond. Goals. I stared at it. Lena had just coded. Her heart had stopped for 15 seconds. And Jason was blowing candles. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but instead I put it away and held Lena's hand tighter. "It's okay," I whispered. "I'm here. Even if no one else is, I'm here." Later that night, a nurse came in quietly. She sat beside me and said, "You're the strongest mother I've ever seen." I shook my head. "I don't feel strong, I feel hollow." She touched my hand. "You're still standing, that's strength." The next morning, Lena opened her eyes, barely. "But enough," she whispered. "I had a dream. You were holding me the whole time." I smiled. It wasn't a dream. 2 days later, Jason finally replied. "Sorry, been hectic over here. I hope she's okay." That was it. Not, "How is she now?" Not, "Can I come see her?" Not, "Tell her I love her." Just a lazy sentence sent out of guilt. I didn't respond, because he didn't deserve to know anything more about this brave little girl who kept choosing to live even after he chose to forget her. When I chose to be a mother without him, I stood at the edge of Lena's hospital bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest. Slow, measured. Each breath was a reminder. She was still here. It had been 4 days since her last collapse. She was stable now. Weaker than before, but stable. The doctors used words like guarded optimism and critical but improving. But I didn't need their words anymore. I had my own. We keep going. I made a decision that morning, one I had avoided for too long. I asked the nurse for Lena's discharge timeline. She looked surprised. You want to take her home? Yes, if there's even a window, I want her to feel sunlight through real windows. I want her to smell something that doesn't come from disinfectant wipes. The nurse smiled softly. That's the most beautiful prescription I've heard all week. I called a social worker, scheduled in-home equipment delivery, converted my tiny living room into a quiet care space. I called the insurance, sold more jewelry, maxed out another card, but I didn't stop because this wasn't survival anymore. This was a rebuild. Jason hadn't texted again, not even after Lena's near-death episode, not even when I posted an update on the family page, where he still lurked but never liked. He was gone, truly gone. And for the first time, I didn't feel empty about it. I felt clear. The first morning Lena woke up at home, she smiled at the ceiling. Is this real, Mama? Very real. It smells like pancakes. It's Saturday. What else would it smell like? She laughed softly, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. Later that afternoon, we sat on the couch. She leaned against me, weak but content. Then she asked, Does Daddy know I'm home? I took a deep breath. Maybe. She looked up. Is he coming? No, sweetheart. Why? I didn't lie this time. Because sometimes people leave when things get hard. And that's not your fault, that's theirs. She nodded slowly, didn't cry, just whispered, I'm glad you stayed. I kissed her forehead. I'll always stay. Even when it hurts, even when it's hard. Especially then. That night, after she fell asleep in her little hospital bed in the living room, I lit a candle and sat beside her. I opened my journal, wrote in big letters, Day 1, just us. And under it, I wrote, no longer surviving, now building, now choosing, now living. A few days later, a letter arrived. From Jason, handwritten. Neat, heavy. I almost didn't read it, but I did. Emery, I know I've failed, I've lied, I've run. I see your posts, I see her getting better. And all I can feel is shame. I didn't know how to stay. I didn't know how to face sickness or pain or watching someone I love suffer. But you did. And because of that, she still smiles. I'm not asking to come back. I know I don't deserve that. I just want you to know I'm sorry for all of it. Tell her I'm proud of her and that I hope she forgives me someday. Jason. I folded the letter. Didn't cry. I placed it in the back of the drawer because her forgiveness wasn't mine to give. That would be Lena's decision. One day, maybe. But for now, I chose something else. I chose peace. I chose presence. I chose being a mother without him. And for the first time in a long time, it was enough. She got better, and he asked to come back. Lena was getting stronger. Her appetite came back. Her cheeks were fuller. Her laugh returned, bright and loud, like it had been before hospitals and needles and quiet prayers at 2 a.m. Every day felt like a tiny miracle. She started painting again, started dreaming again. She even asked to go to the park one morning. I cried in the car on the way there. The doctor said the treatments were working. Her numbers were better than expected. We were still cautious, still fragile, but we weren't afraid anymore. And just when the light had begun to shine again, Jason showed up. He didn't call, didn't text. He just came, knocked on the door one Sunday morning while I was folding laundry and Lena was watching cartoons with a bowl of dry cereal. I opened the door and stared. He looked tired, older, guilty. Hi, he said quietly. I didn't speak. Can I come in? Why are you here, Jason? I wanted to see her, see you. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. You don't get to want now. He nodded. I know I messed everything up. You didn't mess it up. You left, that's different. He exhaled. I've been going to therapy, trying to figure out why I couldn't face what was happening, why I ran. And what did you find? That I was weak, that I was selfish, that I failed both of you. I didn't reply. He looked down, then said, I saw her pictures. She looks amazing, so strong. She is. That's because of you. I folded my arms. You didn't come when she was dying. What makes you think you deserve to show up now that she's healing? He swallowed hard. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness today. I'm here to ask for a chance to earn it. I looked him in the eye. A chance to do what? To be her father again. You don't get to be a father again. You get to be a man who once had a daughter and chose someone else's birthday party while she was in ICU. That stunned him. He stepped back slightly, shame written all over his face. I regret everything. Regret doesn't raise a child. Regret doesn't sit beside a hospital bed. Regret doesn't wipe vomit or sing lullabies between beeps and oxygen tanks. Silence. Then he said the one thing I didn't expect. Can I write to her? Just letters, so she knows. that I never stopped thinking about her. Even if I wasn't brave enough to show it, I thought about it. And then I nodded, slowly. You can send them to me. I'll hold on to them. And when she's ready, if she ever is, I'll let her choose whether she wants to read them. He looked like he wanted to cry, but I wasn't here for his tears. Not anymore. I stepped back toward the door. You lost your place in this family, Jason, but you still have the chance to be honest. Start there. He nodded. Thank you, Emery. Don't thank me, thank your daughter, Tessie, for surviving you. That night, Lena asked why I looked so serious. I sat beside her and kissed her forehead. Someone from our past stopped by today. She tilted her head. Was it Daddy? I nodded. He wants to write to you. She didn't say anything for a while. Then softly, I don't think I want to read anything yet. That's okay, baby. You don't have to. You're the one who gets to decide. She leaned on my shoulder. Can we go to the park again tomorrow? Of course. Because the best future isn't built with apologies. It's built with presence. And finally, we were building again. She was his daughter by blood, but mine by fight. It was spring when Lena took her first steps outside without holding my hand. She was wearing a bright yellow hat, one she picked out herself from a thrift store. Her hair had started to grow back, soft and fine, like baby feathers. She was smiling again, running again, living, and I was still holding my breath. The doctor said she was in remission, not cured, but a step closer to hope. A word I hadn't dared to say out loud in years. We celebrated quietly, just the two of us. Cupcakes, balloons, a movie night with blankets piled high. At one point, Lena looked at me and said, "We made it, Mama." And for the first time, I let myself cry in front of her. Jason had kept his word. He sent letters, one every week. I kept them in a box under my bed. Lena never asked for them, never mentioned him. Until one night, months later, she did. Do you still have Daddy's letters? I do. Can I read one? You can read as many or as few as you want. We sat together on her bed. She opened the first one. Read it silently, then the second. By the third, her hands were shaking. He said he was scared. He was. But you stayed. Always. She didn't cry. She just put the letters back in the box and said, "He was my dad by blood, right?" Yes. But you were the one who held me when it hurt. I nodded. I was. You were the one who stayed when I threw up, when I yelled, when I didn't want to wake up. Yes. Then I think you're more my parent than he ever was. I couldn't speak. My heart was in my throat. She reached over, took my hand. You're my real mom, Mama, not because of science, but because you loved me when it was hard. I kissed her forehead, held her as tight as I could. You made me a mother, Lena, not the other way around. Years passed. Lena got older, stronger. We started a blog about our journey. We called it Held Together. People wrote in from around the world. Other parents, other fighters. Jason never showed up again in person, but sometimes he emailed. Short notes. Still apologizing, still trying. I never responded. Lena never asked to meet. She didn't need closure. She had something better. She had a life, a future, and a mother who never stopped choosing her. One day she asked me, "Will you come with me to speak at my school? They want me to talk about survivorship. And I want people to see what a real mother looks like." I smiled through tears. Of course, I'll stand right beside you, just like always. She walked up to the stage in her white dress. Confident, graceful. She began her speech with one line. I'm here today because someone refused to give up on me. And she pointed at me in the front row. That was the moment I knew. I had done it. Not perfectly. Not without breaking. But I had loved her through the storm. And in return, she gave me something no one else could. Truth, honor, a name. Not step, not guardian, not replacement. Mom. Because in the end, she was his daughter by blood, but mine by fight. And that fight? We won. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.